Hit Wicket is the cricket game backed by Harsha Bogle and me, so you know it's full of nerd energy. This strategic cricket game isn't just about frantic tapping. You make decisions based on how cricket actually works. You've got to set a batter up, right? And you can't hit a six from the first ball. Hit Wicket knows all that, and they made a game that makes it work with a few gaming twists in there as well. So play, build, and manage your team, because you are the batter, the bowler, the coach, the selector. I mean, you're basically everything in this game, right? And there's no ads on Hit Wicket. So download it for free for mobile and unleash your inner cricket legend.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Overthrows podcast. As promised, it is going to be extremely random. Different series will pop up at different times and we'll be previewing and reviewing them as things come along. I am Behram, of course, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter. And with me today is Estelle Vasudevan. You can find her at Estelle_Vasudev, the number 1 on Twitter. And she is here to fill in for Jared because we are going to be previewing Sri Lanka's upcoming test series in England. They get 3 test matches, and this is Sri Lanka's first bout with baseball, Estelle. They haven't played England in a test match since 2020-21.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because it's back in England's backyard. They're back in England for a test series for the first time since 2016. So it's been a while. Should be interesting how things go, particularly with, one of the main proponents of baseball, Stokes, not in the series with missing out due to injury.
Yeah, no, that is a very major talking point. And just to come to your first point, actually, Sri Lanka won a historic test series in England in 2014. They won it 1-0. It was a 2-match test series, and then they toured again in 2016. But since then, they haven't, played a test match in England, and it's been 8 years. So that is a long, long time. And of course, we know historically, England never even played test series versus Sri Lanka. They would play the solitary test match here and there until Murali took 16 wickets in a test match at Lord's, I believe. Or the Oval, actually. It wasn't Lord's, it was the Oval. Yeah. So things did change then, but now they've kind of gone back to, the older template where these two sides don't particularly play each other a lot. So perhaps a good showing over here could change that. And it is really interesting because, most teams now have played baseball or England who are employing the baseball approach. But Sri Lanka are one of those rare sides which hasn't actually done that yet. And anything could happen. And the fact that Ben Stokes has torn his hamstring, and not just him, Zach Crawley has broken a finger. So there are 2 injuries over here in England's camp, and Jimmy Anderson has retired. So perhaps that allows Sri Lanka, a window to be more competitive and maybe steal a test over here.
I think it's going to be massively important that they are competitive because, like you mentioned, right, they haven't played in England in 8 years. It's very unlikely that we'll see them playing, 3-match series in countries like Australia, even India, to be honest, because they haven't really had good showings there. But England is historically a country where Sri Lanka have kind of been competitive over the last couple of series, right? So it's, I think, just for Sri Lanka's their test cricket, it's going to be really important that they do well and they're competitive against this English side. Coming to the 2 injuries and the retirement, I think if you look at that English side, all of the batters got runs against the West Indies, right? So I don't know whether you should be underestimating what that side's going to be like without Stokes and Crawley, because all of them are in the runs, particularly the guys like Pope. Joe Root is one who has tormented Sri Lanka over last couple of series, particularly playing in Sri Lanka. So I think Sri Lanka will still be wary because they know what this English side is capable of. Obviously, Jimmy Anderson is also going to be a massive hole for England to fill. I do think, though, with baseball, I know a lot of people like to criticize it and like to point out that this is not the first time that countries are playing attacking cricket, but their relentless kind of drive to always play attacking cricket and always go for a result means that it does open the door for other teams and makes the game a bit more competitive, because in the past, if England wanted to grind out Sri Lanka over 2 days and, really bat them out of a test, you're really going to see that in baseball, right? You're going to see them bat for maybe 4 sessions. If they get going, they're probably going to be at about 500 in those 4 sessions. But if not, it's not going to be those long grinding test matches. So I think it gives Sri Lanka an opportunity also to be competitive, but it's like it could be, annihilation, or it could be a really competitive series.
I'm really hoping for a competitive series, and I think it
Yeah.
might just be possible as well, because you make a fantastic point that, a lot of, I've seen a lot of fans make this argument that, oh, baseball isn't new. We've seen teams attack before, but it is new because everyone has that buy-in in this unit and everyone just, goes berserk. That is the template. And this is the second iteration of baseball, so maybe we'll see some tweaks in approach. I mean, Ben Stokes was at the forefront, right, of baseball. I know it's named or coined after, the term is coined after Brendan McCullum, but Stokes has been the leader. It's been his vision as much as it has been Baz's, and he's not going to be there. So I would be really interested to see how Ollie Pope fills in for Ben Stokes, because he will get to captain England in the series. And can he replicate the same sort of funky feels? And I mean, with respect to batting, at least you can think that, okay, I mean, the batting templates might not change as much. But with respect to on-field captaincy, how good will Pope be? Can he, manufacture wickets like Stokes often does? That, I feel, is the major question going into the series. And, there are a lot of small cogs that make baseball tick. And one of those cogs is the opening pair. Crawley and Duckett are not the best openers in the world, but as a pair, the way they go about things, they have made it work. And in fact, if anything, they've gotten more consistent doing what they do, which is quite fascinating. The pair is broken up now. Crawley is not there, and Duckett will be opening with Dan Lawrence. We know that much. It has been confirmed. Dan Lawrence is not an opening bat. From what I know, he's a middle order bat, right? So this will be a very interesting sort of thing to, observe during the series, that if the opening pair doesn't click, can England continue to baseball the way they have been? And then, of course, Jimmy not being there is something that you can't really fix overnight. It might take decades to find another bowler of that caliber. I remember when I was at Lord's, people were talking about Gus Atkinson and how the baton had been passed. And I was like, he's done really well. He's taken 12 wickets. He's not Jimmy Anderson. He's not even a replacement of Jimmy Anderson, right? So, I mean, this is a good time for Sri Lanka to play England because, A, they're getting 3 test matches. B, this is the latter end of the summer, right? It's the end of the summer. So the ball won't be doing as much as it potentially would do in May, right? That is also in Sri Lanka's favor. And they're getting Old Trafford, Lords, and the Oval. Some of those surfaces take a bit of turn. And if I were Prabhat Jayasuriya, who took a fifer in the tour game, I would be excited.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you look at the past, I think about 9 or 10 series, Sri Lanka have always come in May and June. The last time they traveled in August was that 1998 one-off test, which they won. And like you mentioned before, Murli got the 16 wickets. So it is a good time for Sri Lanka to tour England, I think, because it's the latter half of the summer. The pitches are going to be a little bit more worn down, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also kind of, it plays into this whole kind of the narratives England try to build, right? To make it. I know a lot of people are critical about, them saving test cricket, and it is fun. It is fun to make fun of England, but also there is an element where it makes things more interesting, right? And that's the name of the game, right? If you want test cricket to last and it to be played by more than the big 3, then the games have to be competitive. So I think they're doing a few things. I don't know whether this is intentional, bringing Sri Lanka in August, but it does, in my opinion at least, bring Sri Lanka a little bit closer to England on those terms, because, Sri Lanka don't play a lot overseas either, especially in, quick conditions. So having a bit of spin and a pitch that might wear and tear will be important, because like you said, Jayasuriya's had a fantastic time, fastest Sri Lankan to 50 wickets, I think. So yeah, it is a really good, it is a good time for Sri Lanka to play England. And also there's like no excuse to not be competitive now, right? When you look at
Yeah.
the context of what's going on, there's no excuse for them to not be competitive.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to people in the comment section. Of course, I forgot to do that earlier. Vignesh Ram is here, Abdul TS, Elijah Palmer, Jessica Bell, and Sag. And Jessica has a really fascinating point over here. I'm going to read her comment out loud. She has basically mentioned how, Prabha Jayasuri averages 24 at home and 57 away. And this is his big chance to prove his mettle and, show his skills overseas. Now, I would love to see what Prabha Jayasuriya's record is in Gaul, even within Sri Lanka, because he was a bit of a Gaul specialist. And
Yeah.
I remember him not being as good in Colombo.
Mm.
But then again, I mean, I saw the scorecard for the tour game. I didn't particularly follow it. I know he took a fifer in one of those innings. And, Lords and the Oval are two surfaces where you can, sometimes see spinners take heaps of wickets. So he could be a bit of a trump card over here. And it's not like England are a fantastic, team playing spin. I mean, Duckett is good.
Yeah.
Duckett will sweep. Ollie Pope showed that he can also sweep and reverse sweep and lap sweep in India. And Joe Root obviously will find his way around. But there is an opening over here, and there's other players who aren't in this team either. Like this experience in Bairstow, which isn't there anymore. The keeper is new. I love Jamie Smith based on what I've seen thus far. Really like what I see. But he's not a frontline keeper. He's supposed to be a frontline batter, and he's going to be playing number 6 now, right? There are things that aren't really working out theoretically with respect to this England team, and it is an opportunity for Sri Lanka to pounce on. And given the fact that after the first test match at Lords in the West Indies series, even the West Indies had phases where they competed really hard, right?
Yeah.
That has to give Sri Lanka some sort of motivation that they can be better than the West Indies, because you've got some senior players in this squad with heaps of experience.
Yeah, just on Prabhat, I think, he's been extremely dominant in Gaul, but you also have to factor in the fact that he's played a lot in Gaul. Like Sri Lanka are playing
Yes.
a majority of their home tests at the Gaul International Stadium, and so he hasn't had the opportunity really to figure out conditions in other places. I think overseas he's only played in Bangladesh and New Zealand. So New Zealand he wasn't very successful, and it's 1 or 2 tests there. So you can't really measure where he stands. I think this will obviously be a good test, as you mentioned. Lords, and particularly the Oval, historically has been kind of spinner friendly. So it should be interesting to see. The only factor, I think, for Sri Lanka is none of those bowlers have played test cricket in England. So that will be a huge, I think that's going to be a massive point to discuss in this series, because obviously you've got Vishwa Fernando who's played for Yorkshire in the county championship, and you've had Asitha Fernando also with some domestic cricket in the UK. But overall, international cricket, they don't have experience there, right? So that's going to be a major factor. The thing with the way England play is that anything is possible, right? So if Sri Lanka are able to kind of make early inroads, again, Joe Root is, I think, going to be the main part of that batting lineup, right? Particularly with the amount of runs he has got against Sri Lanka of late. If they can make some early inroads, they should be able to put England under pressure. But I mean, there's a lot to factor in even with the batting. I mean, Chandimal, Matthews, Dimuth have all toured England twice for Test cricket. Matthews, of course, was one of the biggest stars in that 2014 series win. But the tour game, the batting looked very, very shaky. So that'll be a bit of a concern coming into at least the first test.
We'll come to the bowling later because, of course, I have other stuff. Like, I want to talk about the seamers. But you mentioned the batters, right? You mentioned how Dimuth, Karunaratne, Dinesh Chandimal, and Angelo Matthews have toured England twice before. Dimuth, of course, has been very successful as a test match opener. And Nishan Madushka has got some runs in that tour game. And I mean, he's gotten some runs in his test career as well. He's off to a decent start. I expect those two to open. And then you've got players who actually have been around for a bit, right? Kusal Mendes. Angelo Matthews, of course, has been around for forever. Dinesh Chandimal has been a regular in the test side. He's gotten runs in England too, from what I recall. There was an ODI back in the day when he was young and he scored a ton. And there was a whole controversy of how they let him score that 100 and all that stuff. I remember this distinctly. DDS is there and he's the captain. Sadira Samaravikrama isn't a youngster anymore. I've been seeing him for a bit. And then you've got Kamindu Mendes, who might not even get a game or the first test, right? And he's averaging, 64 or whatever in first class cricket, and more than Bradman, is it, in test cricket thus far? So there are players in this team who can, bat. And these surfaces, if they are not like extremely spicy for the seamers, and that could be the case, then that is a bit of a level playing field.
That's the thing, I think, with that batting lineup, right? You've obviously got some quality in it. Dimuth Karunaratne, again, I think this is going to be a very, very important series for him. We did a pod on, the best current test openers, right? And he was at number 3. And
Yeah.
I remember us discussing how there's a bit of a gap between him and the top 2, right? Usman Khawaja and Rohit Sharma. I think this series against England could go a long way towards, narrowing that gap, because he's been a massively successful opener across the board over the last few years, right? Or even over the last decade. But he still hasn't really gotten those runs in England. He doesn't have a century there. Both Chandimal and Matthews do. So this will be, I think, crucial for him to kind of establish his legacy as well, because he's spoken about getting 10,000 runs, playing 100 tests, which we don't know whether it will happen because of the infrequency in which Sri Lanka play test cricket, right? But the record in England is something he can definitely work on. If you look back, Kumar Sangakkara got his first test done in the UK probably in his last series, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the opportunity Dimuth has, right? I'm not sure whether he will play in the next time Sri Lanka come to England. So it'll be a massive opportunity for him. Nishan Madhushka has got a lot of runs in domestic cricket, but of course conditions are different. I'd be very interested to see how they go about that number 7 position, because Kamindu Mendes would have been the automatic pick, but his visa got delayed. And he arrived only a couple of days ago. So
Gotcha.
whether they go for Sadira Samaravikrama or Kamindu Mendes is still up in the air. I feel that Kamindu would be the better option, as he's been in good form across the board. And that's not even considering his ambidextrous bowling.
Yeah, of
which
course.
is what most people know about him.
That's how we initially knew about him.
Yeah. So like you said, average of 64 in first class cricket, right? There has to be some quality there. But I'd like to see him come in. I'd like to see him getting more opportunities in that middle order, rather than, newer players being pushed up the order. One big concern I would say is Kusal Mendes. He hasn't been in such great form in test cricket, to be honest. Like he's had kind of a resurgence in limited overs cricket, where he's become a faster scorer, and he's become a very successful opener for Sri Lanka in that spot. But in test cricket, runs have come against Afghanistan, against Bangladesh, against Ireland, but haven't really come against big opposition. So that will be a concern for Sri Lanka, because no matter what you do, you have to get runs on the board, right? Otherwise, it's not going to matter how well Prabhat Jayasuriya bowls if you can't get a good enough total on the board.
Especially in all of Old Trafford, Lords, and the Oval, right? You need runs on the board over there. Some interesting comments have come in. Of course, you were mentioning how Karunaratne could cash in on this England series. Can you look up what his record is in England? Because I'd be very curious to know what he averages in the country. But Jessica Bell has told us that Dimuth Karunaratne has been averaging 40 plus for the last 4 calendar years in Test cricket, and his career average has jumped from 36 to 41. So that is quite phenomenal. And he is one of those attritional batters from yesteryear who are very textbook and will block it out. And he is the anti-Bazball. So that'll be a fun little battle. What is it? How much does he average in England?
Yeah, his average is 28 in England, right? 23 in Australia, 25 in India, 24 in South Africa. So that's what I meant when I said that, his legacy is going to depend on a lot on this series. Like if he can get a lot of runs here, people would be, I think, more open to recognizing him as one of the best opening batters of this era, because like you said, he has the record. If you look at the averages and all of that, he has the record, but you have to also consider who Sri Lanka are playing regularly, right? They don't
and
get
away
a lot
numbers.
of They don't get a lot of test matches in difficult, like not difficult, un-Sri Lankan conditions, right?
Senna nations.
Yes.
I suppose, and the West Indies, I guess. But those are the places where if you perform as an Asian bat, I mean, that's when your credibility improves and people start taking you seriously. And I mean, like you mentioned, Sangha took a long time to score a ton in England. Varun has confirmed he scored his first ton in 2011, and his first test ton at Lords was 2014. So, I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity for many Sri Lankan players to go out there and kind of, make some history. Challenge the status quo, if you will, if they are to play a certain kind of or brand of cricket. And I mean, let's come to the seamers now, right? Because of course, if Sri Lanka are to win a test match in England, the seamers have to turn up. It can't happen despite that. I don't see a world where that happens. But anyway, you've got the Fernandos, Vishwa and Asitha. I think Vishwa Fernandos landed a county deal as well with Yorkshire or someone. So, I mean, I don't think he's played for them yet, but that should help him. And
Vishwa's
then you've
been playing for them and he has had quite a bit of success, if I'm not mistaken.
And he's a left arm quick, right?
Yeah. So the last time he played first class cricket, Yorkshire versus Derbyshire, he got 9 wickets. That's in June.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. So that is really, really promising for Sri Lanka. I didn't know that he'd already played for Yorkshire. I thought they just signed him. But if he's gotten 9 wickets in his last game for them, and he's a left arm seamer, then he's an automatic pick, I suppose, in the team. And then I've seen some other new names in the squad, Ratnaike, and then there was Tharar or Tharaka, something like that. Sorry. Yeah, Tharaka. Yeah, so I don't know much about those guys, but I would assume that it would be 2 of Lahiru Kumara, Kasun Rajata, and Asitha Fernando to partner Vishwa in these test matches. But tell me about the other guys, and who do you think will be forming the 3-man pace attack potentially for Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think the 2 Fernandos are pretty much nailed on to play unless there's an injury. Asitha has been, fantastic. One of the most versatile test bowlers we've had in Sri Lanka, He's not very quick, but can nip the ball around, can get some reverse swing, has a really good Yorker bouncer, right? So he's going to be handy. Vishwa, obviously, left arm quick. And again, one of those guys who just, is on the spot all the time. The third seamer is the one that there's going to be a question mark over. I'm hearing that Milan Ratnaika is, slated to make his debut. He's a tall, quick. He was pretty good in the warm-up game as well. So I think he's kind of bowled himself into contention. Rajitha has been there for a while. Unfortunately, hasn't really been able to nail down his spot in the test team because one, Sri Lanka plays so infrequently. And secondly, like they are more... they try to play 2 quicks most of the time, and then it's generally Vishwa and Asitha who get a go. I would honestly, any other time, I would be saying that this is a no-brainer. It has to be Lahiru Kumara, right? He's quick. He can hurry the batters. He can give you that X factor that you need in the likes of someone like Mark Wood, right?
Yeah. He's got a good bumper. He can be that enforcer in the middle overs for Sri Lanka.
Yeah. And we've seen that in limited overs cricket of late in the last couple of World Cups, right? Where he's had these incredible spells where he's generating a lot of pace. He looks in good rhythm, hitting batters and, just being that enforcer, like you mentioned, for Sri Lanka. But he hasn't really had a lot of cricket in the last few months. So you don't know whether he's still bowling quick. You don't know whether he's got his rhythm right. He did play in the warm-up game, but there's not much to go off on what he's like in terms of form at the moment. So that'll be the big question mark. So I am expecting either Rajitha or Milan Ratnaika to play. I don't think Kumara will be in the first test. The thing with Sri Lanka though is that you can pretty much expect at least one injury or some kind of soreness to come into play because they're all kind of coming in and out of injury, right?
Maybe that's why they've picked like 6 paces.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 end up playing at some point in this series because it is a 3-match series. And I mean, I can say the same thing about England, right? I don't think Mark Wood and Gus Atkinson are going to play all three tests. There might be.
So that's what we thought, Estelle, when they were
Mhm.
playing the West Indies and they were retiring Jimmy after the first test, that England are going to try their bench strength and play multiple seamers in the series. They didn't do that. They went with the same series, seamers in all three
Yeah,
test
so
matches.
that's what I mean. Like they've
Yeah.
already played those tests, right? And then three more is, I don't know. I mean, like you said, it might end up that Atkinson and Wood play all three, but then we could see a couple of changes. I think for the first game for Sri Lanka, it'll probably be Milan Ratnayaka or Kasan Rajitha.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll be keeping a keen eye on Milan Ratnayaka because I saw that he did decently well in the tour game, but I've never seen him bowl. But if you're saying he's a tall bowler, then maybe that's something Sri Lanka could do with, right? As far as England's seam attack is concerned, I think Wokes definitely plays, right? He will 100% play all of England's home tests till his legs are working, I suppose. And after that, you've got, three options in Gus Atkinson, who did very well versus the West Indies, barring that test in Trent Bridge. That was the only one he was poor in. The others he was very, very good in. Matthew Potts should probably get a game in this series. He has played for England prior. He's done well in the past, and he was really, really good for the England Lions in India not too long ago, when England's first team was also playing in India. So I expect Potts to get a game in this series, or hopefully he does. Mark Wood probably won't play all three test matches. You're right over there, right? Ollie Stone is also in the squad, so maybe they can rotate Gus and Stone and give Potts the series. I'm not sure what England are, or what lines they're thinking along, because Stokes was bowling a fair few overs for them upon
Yeah.
return.
Yeah,
He's not going to be bowling those overs
say,
anymore. Yeah.
with Stokes missing out, am I hearing it right that they're not going to replace him with a batter? So you're probably going to have one extra bowling spot, aren't you?
Oh, is that so? I did not hear that,
That's
but
what
that would be
I'm
very
hearing,
interesting.
that the wicketkeeper is going to be at 6 and Wokes at 7. So
So who's at? Oh yeah, Harry Brook is at 5. You're right. That means that England will be going for an extra bowler, and that is an attacking option because you ultimately want to take 20 wickets. I'm just really keen to see if Ollie Pope is Bazball captain material, right? And like, who else could it possibly have been? There's not really anyone because Bairstow's gone, and he's probably the most senior person in the team now. Harry Brook is there. He's young, and potentially, in the future, England could blood him, but now's not the time, I suppose. George Dobell is very keen on seeing Harry Brook as captain someday, based on the conversation we had back in July. Yes, it was July. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and if they have a deeper, let's say, or not so deep batting lineup, then that gives Sri Lanka even more inroads. And the only plus side is that England won't be tiring out anyone, and they can, they can distribute the overs better because they'll have lots of seam options, and then they have Shoaib Bashir. So it'll be very interesting. Life after Jimmy has taken an interesting turn because all of a sudden they've lost their all-rounder, and now England will have to find the right balance. And I don't know if you were following the West Indies series closely, but they selected Dylan Pennington for that series, who is a hit the deck hard kind of speedster.
also injured, right?
Yeah, he's also injured. So not like great news as far as injuries are concerned for England. And there are a lot of unknowns because we know that they're going to play a certain brand of cricket, but will they be able to execute it in the absence of their opener, cigar smoking opener, their, I don't even know what adjective I'm supposed to use for Ben Stokes. Their maverick captain, right? And then also there's no Jimmy Henderson. And Jimmy Anderson is the sort of guy who, against relatively weaker opposition can, eat them alive on his own. So I think that it will be a closer series than many anticipate. And with that, let's go to predictions, I suppose. Estelle, give me your prediction. Yeah.
So I mean, I work with a couple of guys who are in the UK and who will be at the games. And one big thing they've been talking about is the weather in Manchester is going to be tricky. So that could potentially end up as a draw. I would say it would be either 2-1 or 1-all.
Ooh.
2-1 to England. I don't think it'll be 3-0 because just based on the fact that baseball does give you opportunities, I think at least by the oval test, Sri Lanka should be able to put up a good enough performance to win a game.
You know what? I like that. I'm going to go 2-1 as well because I have a feeling Sri Lanka might be able to steal a test match over here. Vignesh Murali is asking in the comments what are my thoughts on Sri Lanka's batting. We did discuss it earlier, but I think it's far more fabled than many people imagine it to be. Like it's much better than the West Indies, and even the West Indies scored some runs, right? So you're looking at Karunaratne, who's been so good for Sri Lanka, and as we mentioned is probably the third best opener in Test cricket, in contemporary cricket. And then you've got tons of experience, or heaps of experience in Angelo Matthews and Dinesh Chandimal. And I mean, Kusal Mendes, we know is not having a good time, but we know he's still quality. Like he can bat. And the youngster Madushka is good. And, Kamindu Mendes is averaging more than Bradman in Test cricket as we speak. So there are some positive signs over here. Jessica Bell says that Ollie Stone has played only 5 county games, 10 wickets at 47. So yeah, that's an interesting selection then. Thanks for that information, Jessica. But I do feel that if things go right, like if Sri Lanka can bat deep in one of these games and bowl well, then they can very easily win that game.
Yeah,
if I
and
were to
one
pick a
guy we
venue,
haven't-
I would say Lords of the Oval. Those are the
Yeah.
2 test matches in which
Yeah.
they can win one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying we haven't even spoken about Pathum Nissanka, right? Who returned to the squad in 2 years. He could be one of those wild card, guys that just throw in for one of the tests.
Yep.
Because he's been so successful. So he's a guy who, in my opinion, is made for Test cricket. I know a lot of people, a lot of non-Sri Lankans will be surprised hearing that because he's had so much success in T20 and ODI cricket of late, right?
Yes.
But he seems to, like, the way he plays the game, the way he plays multi-day cricket, right? Just the way he bats, it feels like that is his natural rhythm, the way he bats there. But I think they prioritized limited overs cricket, and rightly so, right? They prioritized limited overs cricket for him because he was carrying a back injury. And so he hasn't featured for Sri Lanka in the last couple of years. There is actually a conversation whether he should be maybe coming in to replace Kusal Mendes. I don't know whether that will happen.
I like that. I do like that.
I would be a little bit hesitant to push him to number 3 in England right at once. It's not the easiest place to bat, right? So that will be interesting to see. But I mean, that's another backup option that Sri Lanka have, who at least on paper is a very quality batter.
Yeah, I think Pathum Nissanka is on his way to becoming a mainstay in Sri Lankan teams across formats. He's already a mainstay in the limited overs teams, and he's upped his game so significantly, even his strike rate in limited overs. He's a proper bat, very textbook in so many ways, but also like sometimes makes everything look very effortless. Like even when he goes for his attacking shots, it's not like he's just throwing his bat at it, right?
Yeah.
It's all very aesthetically pleasing with Pathum Nissanka, and I really like his slog sweep as well. A good cutter of the ball from what limited cricket I've seen him play. But yes, I mean it's going to be a very very interesting series, and everyone loves the English summer anyway. Like as a cricket fan growing up in Pakistan, I've never missed an English summer. I think I've always watched whatever team plays over there. So let's see. 2-1 is my prediction. Estelle has gone for 2-1 or 1-1. And I think that pretty much wraps this up. So thank you, Estelle, for taking out the time, and thank you to everyone in the comments for interacting with us. No super chats today, but I mean, we're going to be having these shows very, very frequently. If there's like a crazy test match, we'll jump on Good Areas Live and record something. If there's a series coming up, we'll jump on Good Areas Live and record that, right? The preview for that. And if a series is just finished, we'll do the same. So you can actually expect to see both myself and Estelle like in a couple of days to review the women's series, the Sri Lanka women versus Ireland women, that entire tour. So it's going to be more, it's going to be more frequent, but very haphazard. We're about to go on a roller coaster ride, guys. So very excited for this next phase of Good Areas. And yeah, just a quick reminder to everybody, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. It can prove to be your one-stop shop for all the work that we do as part of our team, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. So yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple of days then, I guess. Till then, you all enjoy yourselves and have a good one. That's all from myself and Estelle. Goodbye. Moku?
Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. If you are following my work, we know that you are a true cricket sadist and you need your hit every day. And sometimes, sadly, there is actually no cricket to watch. So how about if someone made a very fun game that you could use for the moments when there is no on-field action? Welcome to Hit Wicket, a strategic game of cricket which isn't about slamming your finger on the screen very fast. You work out what works best based on how cricket actually works. Dot balls lead to wickets, 1s and 2s to 4s and 6s. So there is no way you can bowl a great Yorker every ball or smash 3 6s at the beginning of your innings. This is proper cricket, yet it still has some gaming powers in there as well. Hit Wicket is about playing, but also building and managing your team. You are the batter, bowler, owner, coach, and captain. It's your dream. No ads, just cricket. So download Hit Wicket today, because this is a cricket game made for you and supported by major cricket nerds. If you have a passion for sports and aspire to work in the industry, I